The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by Window World of Western Mass, a local family business with experienced craftsmen offering vinyl, composite, and James Hardie siding. WindowWorldOfWesternMA.com. The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by Ski Sundown in nearby New Hartford, Connecticut, offering skiing and snowboarding 7 days and nights a week until 10 p.m. Ticket and lesson information at skisundown.com. Winter made better.
Welcome to the Fabulous 413. I'm Khalees Smith. Monty Belmonte's immune system is waging a private war against the throat bug, so I fly solo today. Lucky me, and well wishes to him. Keep punching those fluids. Later in the show, we'll crash a timely showing of the movie Selma with a pile of 8th graders at the Triplex Cinema in Great Barrington, and word nerd Emily Brewster continues to allow us to live vicariously through her experiences voting for the various words of the year at the American Dialect Society's meeting there. But first, the TikTok ban is now real, but what exactly does that mean for how we create and interact with people and information online? Let's check in with a professor at UMass who can provide some insight.
A recent press release from UMass Amherst reads, "Avoiding digital censorship can sometimes feel like a game of whack-a-mole with the same success rate, especially when the opponent runs one of the world's most sophisticated surveillance networks, such as China's so-called Great Firewall. But what if outmaneuvering censors was played with a longer view and finer strategy, more like chess?"
Amir Humansadar, Associate Professor of Computer Science in the University of Massachusetts' Amherst Manning College of Information and Computer Sciences, will be extending his previous work on China's Great Firewall with support from the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency's Director's Award. He will work to devise a comprehensive and secure theoretical foundation involving game theory, artificial intelligence, and computational theory to support far-ranging efforts to support digital freedom.
And here to explain all of this digital censorship whack-a-mole is the professor himself, Amir Humansadar. Thank you so much for joining us, Amir. We hear tell you're in the Manning College of Information and Computer Sciences. Do you happen to know offhand if that building is of brutalist architectural design? Because we just talked with one of the professors about brutalism architecture at UMass campus, and there's so many buildings there that are. Do you know if that one is?
Thank you so much. Yeah. I mean, first of all, thank you so much for having me on your program. And yeah, I think we're building a new building. You should come visit it. I like the new design. I like the new building.
Excellent. Well, I can't wait to check it out. This is a fascinating story to me because of what's been going on in the news, of course, with the TikTok ban and with the Supreme Court weighing in on this and digital censorship when it comes from an out-of-state actor like China, as we mentioned in your intro here, while at the same time you've got Meta saying that they don't believe in digital censorship. They don't want to fact check. So there's a fine line between, let's say, First Amendment rights with social media and also, I guess, some sort of statecraft, as it appears that you're working for DARPA and the Defense Department on trying to protect people from this sort of thing, which is really why the TikTok ban has been proposed in the first place. Tell us where you came up with the idea of this sort of game theory as a way to try to defend against potential bad actors.
Yeah, so let me first give you a little bit of context on the problem that I'm working on. So in many countries, China is a big example, people who want to visit different websites on the internet or they want to use different social media platforms, they see some restrictions on what they can watch, what they can see, and what they can post. And this is the problem that is commonly known as internet censorship. For many years, people have been working on this problem. I mean, I'm not the first person to try to help users who face internet censorship. You might have heard of VPNs and proxies, right, which are used for different purposes. But one of the primary uses of these VPNs and proxies are to help people who reside in China and Iran and those countries, and they want to bypass the restrictions by their governments to, let's say, get on Facebook.com. So my work takes a different kind of pitch at the problem. So the way the community of anti-censorship developers have been functioning has been that we have waited for the censors to deploy a new censorship mechanism. And then when that new mechanism goes into effect, the community of anti-censorship would struggle to find a way to get around that new form of censorship. Right? So it's like a new attack on internet traffic, and then whenever a new thing happens, then we would struggle to find some way to get around it. My approach tries to be more proactive. So as opposed to waiting for, let's say, China to devise their next mechanism for censorship, we want to be able to somehow speculate about what technique they might use in the future, so that instead of waiting for them to deploy that new mechanism, we actually think about it. We develop some fixes or defenses against that futuristic mechanism, and then even develop those mechanisms so that once they're deployed by China, once and if they're deployed by China, we already have the defenses to provide to the users. We already have the right VPN to give to the users that would work against that futuristic type of censorship. So I think the term game comes from this concept that we want to kind of think about what might happen in the future, and this is kind of playing it as a game.
In my brain, the way you've currently described it is like the U.S. and its internet interests are basically like the central character in something like a bullet hell, and everything's coming in from the outside. Or a tower defense, and we're just trying our best to keep everything out. And it's very hard to keep everything out, but that's in my brain. That's how I picture the way that you're making this sound.
Mm-hmm. What's interesting to me is that you received a $1 million DARPA Young Faculty Award to build an interactive game theory-based framework to leverage generative AI models that can be used to generate fake web traffic as a distraction to fool censorship.
That's right.
Do you play this like it's a game, like a game of chess? Are people able to actually sit there and basically play a game of like whack-a-mole or chess, avoiding digital censorship with these tools that you've created?
Well, at least that's the plan, right? So I think the plan is for us, the developers, to be able to predict the next moves of the censors. So, I mean, it's already a chess game. Like the fight between censorship entities and also the anti-censorship community is already a game, because it's already a chess game, because each side, they make their moves, and then the next move of every of the players is based on the previous move of their opponent. But then our hope is that by using generative AI and theoretical tools like game theory, we can actually kind of get the upper hand in this game. We want to be able to think about and speculate the next moves of our opponent, so that we already kind of strategize and optimize our resources as we are spending it on running these VPN proxies and circumvention proxies.
We're speaking with Amir Humansadar, who's Associate Professor of Computer Sciences at the University of Massachusetts, Amherst, and we're talking about using game theory to help combat digital censorship, and specifically when it comes to, say, China. Like, I've heard many stories about, you can't Google a picture of Winnie the Pooh in China because, it's used as a disparaging tool against the government. What are we as U.S. citizens, what are we to fear of censorship when it comes to the Chinese government? Or is what you're developing a tool to help Chinese citizens avoid digital censorship in their own country?
So we, the censorship circumvention community, we believe that a free access to the internet is a human right. And in fact, it's been declared as a human right by the United Nations. And therefore, any censorship and any restriction on the flow of information on the internet is against human rights. So we believe that helping others who reside in China, in other countries, to be able to get access to information can help them to improve with democracy, and to be able to organize movements, to be able to plan for political activities and also for social activities. Mm-hmm. So even though helping users in China defeating censorship may not directly change the lives of American people, but in the long term, it can help people in those countries to get access perhaps to some kind of democracy, or be able to better communicate with people in the free world.
I know you may not be able to answer this fully because you are, receiving a very large Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, DARPA, Director Award. But what kind of digital censorship do we as U.S. citizens face from your perspective? And I guess, is the TikTok ban something that amounts to censorship for U.S. users?
I mean, there's a really very fine line between censorship and preserving privacy of the users. I think the way that the US government or like the US entities are supporting a ban on TikTok is that they say we want to protect the privacy of our users because the TikTok company or like similar companies are not complying with our privacy regulations. And therefore, unless they're running by our laws, they might be misusing the private information of the users. So at least this is the way that US entities are supporting a ban on TikTok. On the other hand, the problem of censorship is a little bit different. It's about preventing people from exchanging ideas and information with each other. It's about preventing people from reading news. And the problem is that the end result of banning TikTok and censorship is the same thing. The same mechanism that like the Chinese government would use to block Chinese users from going to Facebook, the very same mechanisms could also be used to ban TikTok in the US, right? And also the same implications could also happen for US users. So even if the goal of those who want to ban TikTok is to preserve the privacy of users in the US, in the end, they're also preventing them from communicating with other users on TikTok, and also it can also prevent them from reading news on TikTok and getting access to information. So the end results would be the same, but the way I see it is that the motivations are different on the ban of TikTok versus the censorship of content in countries like China.
We're speaking with Amir Humansadar, who's the Associate Professor of Computer Science at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, about using game theory to combat digital censorship.
When did the U.S.'s focus on protecting people's privacies change to China specifically?
Yeah, that's a really great question. We all know that in the recent year, China has become a big rival of the U.S. in different aspects from economical perspectives to many different political aspects. So I think the way I see it is that the US government and I would say the US actors, they see a more imminent threat from the Chinese government as a big competitor compared to the previous competitors like perhaps Russia and maybe Iran and those countries, right? So they see a bigger threat from China getting ahead of the US in fields like AI and fields like technology and things like that. And there's also been a lot of news and stories about Chinese actors stealing PI information from US institutions. There's been stories about some Chinese actors collecting private information from the US users. And a lot of those, I think, stories and news have contributed to this bigger concern about Chinese actors being able to collect data about United States citizens and organizations.
One of the other big stories, apart from just the TikTok ban, has been, in years past, Elon Musk buying Twitter because he believes that there was digital censorship by the U.S. government and wants it to be a place of free discourse and discussion. And more recently, Mark Zuckerberg of Meta saying that there would no longer be fact-checking on the Meta platforms, again, in an attempt to say that this is a way to stave off digital censorship. Is what those two billionaires are describing actually digital censorship that we as users of these platforms are experiencing? And or, where is the fine line between the First Amendment and free speech and the spread of false information? I guess in regards to what you do, developing the sort of like these technologies and game theories to try to stave off digital censorship.
Like you said, there's also a very fine line between freedom of speech and preventing kind of misinformation, right? I personally believe there needs to be kind of mechanisms to prevent misinformation from propagating to users. I personally find the lack of those mechanisms on platforms like Meta to be more harmful to the user's safety and to the society than it can help with enabling them with freedom of speech. Even with those kind of mechanisms in place, people were able to communicate, to express their opinions. Of course, those mechanisms for anti-propaganda could also be used for censorship. So if those tools are used improperly, they could also provide Meta and like other actors to enforce censorship. And there's been also some cases that people have been banned from those platforms for no valid reasons. But at the end of the day, we will need those mechanisms. I mean, these big companies, they will need those mechanisms to prevent propaganda and misinformation from doing harm to the users on these platforms. I mean, certainly, if the mechanisms for fact-checking are not smart enough, or if they're not advanced enough, they could harm users by locking them out of the system. But I believe with recent advancement in generative AI and large language models, it should be pretty easy to have very robust fact-checking systems that provide the least amount of harm or accidental kind of damage to the users.
Is it difficult to bring ideas for this sort of regulation that both protects and allows freedoms on the internet to thrive? Is it hard to explain the necessary breathing room to folks who don't necessarily understand the technology or how it works?
At some point, yeah. I mean, I guess I've had kind of a hard time kind of explaining why am I doing what I'm doing, and people are like, oh, you're helping people in China.
Right.
I mean, are you working for the Chinese government, or why do you care, right? And yeah, it's been difficult. Maybe the good thing is a lot of us in the U.S. haven't faced internet censorship, maybe until this point, but I think at least so far, there hasn't been significant amount of censorship. Like most websites that you want to visit, you can freely visit. Most platforms, you've been able to visit. Maybe this ban on TikTok, or even the discussions on this potential ban, familiarize more people in the free world and in the US about this concept of like censorship in other countries.
And soon how it works here.
Very potentially. And, avoiding digital censorship is something that Amir Humansadar, Associate Professor of Computer Science at UMass Amherst, is working on. Apart from this $1 million DARPA-funded interactive game theory-based framework that you are creating using generative AI models to try to play against the system to defeat censorship, which, first of all, if you turn it into a video game, I'd love to try to play.
Again, it's going to be a bullet hell if that's the kind of thing.
Things are coming at you all over the place.
Yes.
But, if you get the right tools in whatever video game you have, you can win that video game. I'm assuming it won't be developed in that framework, though, will it? Will it be like a video game style?
No, it won't be in a video game style. It's kind of more of a metaphor for how we will run the development of those circumvention mechanisms.
Mm-hmm. That being said, you are a professor of computer science at UMass Amherst, and part of the reason that we talk about digital censorship is some people are saying, you need to be protected from these bad actors. What are some of your go-to top, these are the most fundamental things that everyday users of the internet need to make sure to do to avoid the kind of things that like the TikTok ban is trying to use a big broad brush to stave off?
And hopefully it's not just, please stop clicking on links in your email.
Yeah, please stop using the password.
That's right. Or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh my gosh, right. Who's still doing that?
Yeah.
Stop it.
Yeah.
Dark helmet.
Yeah.
So the combination is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the stupidest combination I ever heard in my life. That's the kind of thing an idiot would have on his luggage.
I mean, there's so many things that people could do. I mean, first of all, make sure you always use up-to-date software and platforms. There's often different bugs and vulnerabilities in the software that we use, and it doesn't matter which software, there's always some bugs and vulnerabilities. So make sure you're always up-to-date. And then there's a lot of safe practices. Sorry, that was my Siri.
AI is talking. It's taking over
AI
this interview.
is listening to us. Yeah, they're listening to us. Yeah, with passwords, I think thanks to password managers, using strong passwords have become way, way easier. So we will not have excuses anymore of using short passwords or reusing passwords, right? So we should all be using strong passwords. Two-factor authentication is another powerful mechanism that can help everyone with enhancing their safety. And always, when you're using someone else's device, make sure you clean your data out, make sure you log out, and don't enter your password on public devices.
Well, thank you so much for taking so much time with us today. Amir Humansadar, who is the Associate Professor of Computer Science at the University of Massachusetts Amherst. Thanks again.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I really enjoyed talking to you.
We appreciate it. Soon, we'll hear some of the other words that top the lists of the American Dialect Society with our resident wordster and senior editor at Merriam-Webster, Emily Brewster. But first, we head to the hometown of W.E.B. Du Bois to a showing of Selma at the Triplex Cinema with a bunch of 12 and 13-year-olds. You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by Northeast Solar, helping customers make the switch to solar for savings, energy security, and tax incentives. Learn more at northeast-solar.com. The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by the UMass 5 College Credit Union, offering Co-op Advantage checking with cash back on all purchases, plus secure debit card controls, all from the UMass 5 mobile banking app. Insured by NCUA, umass5.coop.
So why do you think you were allowed to come here today, to miss your classes, and hang out in a movie theater?
Mr. King, you went out on that bridge in direct violation of that judge's orders. You deliberately disobeyed this judge and the governor, did you not?
Thousands of people came to Selma, aroused by Sunday's brutal acts exacted by officials of the city of Selma and the state of Alabama. I felt if I had not led the march, pent-up emotions and inattentions would have led to an uncontrollable, retaliatory situation, a violent situation on both sides.
I'm here with Shirley Edgerton, who's just given a talk to this room full of 8th graders who watched Selma. What's neat about engaging with kids of this age?
Well, I think it's extremely important to have conversations with young people, this age in particular. It provides an opportunity for them to learn information that may not be readily shared, as some of the young people mentioned today. It's an opportunity for them to process some of their thoughts. And then given the world we're living in right now, it's learning history is a great way to think about where we are currently, to really, weigh our progress and kind of help young people figure out their purpose on this planet at this time. So why is that important in 2025 that we should know about the civil rights movement? Yes. Oh, excellent. So it doesn't happen again. You think that's possible? Could that happen again?
When there's showings like this and you're doing talks afterwards, do you run into rooms of kids who, for whatever reason, I feel like this is maybe not the case anymore since George Floyd, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Do you run into rooms where kids have been convinced that, like, civil rights happened, every once in a while there's a bad egg, but, like, on the whole, like, racism is solved?
Well, I wish I could say I haven't, but I have had that experience. And because I think part of that is because the lack of consistency about teaching history. There are other pieces in our society that still encourage that thought. I mean, it can't, how can it not be that we have some young people that think like that? So.
Our lives are not fully lived if we're not willing to die for those we love and for what we believe. But today, Jimmy, we're doing the living and you've done the dying, dear brother. We will not let your sacrifice pass in vain, dear brother. We will not let it go. We will finish what you were after. We will get what you were denied.
Mateo.
Owen.
Petra. I think the protesting is still happening today, and a lot of people are still fighting for what they need and deserve.
Maybe on the issue of rights, not necessarily on race, but also of gender, the right to vote, or the right to have equal health care, or other rights that maybe some people still are divisive on and don't agree.
I thought it was cool how even when the laws have been passed, like it showed in the movie, that people still like fight about the differences in race, but also other things.
Do you know if your school is planning on teaching a segment on civil rights to you this year? Or is that...
No, it's all about civics this year.
I think we've learned about it in the past, but I don't think we're going to.
A little bit.
A little bit. Like 5th grade, we dove into some with race and gender, but not a lot.
I think that it can be influenced by school, but then also people's like outside experiences can really like show what they really do with their knowledge of.
Do you feel like there are people in your life that influence you in that way, or that you get to interact with that way?
My mother. My mother and my parents and my mother's parents, they teach me about these issues personally, so I get to learn about them firsthand and how both sides would present their arguments and how they both feel. So they've given me a lot of good background knowledge on this topic that I can draw from. Yeah, and whether it's also getting involved, but also maybe you've been learning more about what's happened in your community relating to civil rights.
Similar to both of them, it's also just very interesting to see more about the past and want to learn more about it.
There was just so many different things that happened in this movie, and it was a lot of courage, it was a lot of passion and commitment that we saw, okay? Not just black people, there were white people who lost their lives, okay? Who made a commitment to address the issue of inequities for black people.
The Triflex Cinema with Shirley Edgerton, like local phenom, founder of ROPE, member of the NAACP. You just got an award from Mass Art for your involvement in ROPE and beyond.
Yes.
Like how much weight does like events like this have in that other work that you're doing?
Well, that's interesting because I just see all of it as continuity. You know, some of my alums, the older young adults who they were either in Youth Alive Performance Arts or ROPE, or they met me somewhere else, you know. So they call me things like Mama Africa. Community mama, you know, so, because they know, you know, if I have an opportunity to engage with you and either you choose to have a conversation with me, I choose, or you're in a space and there's a need for conversation, they know I'm going there, you know. So I've done work in several of the school districts here, and I just, you know, I've always felt like I'm fulfilling my purpose. You know, I was very fortunate that I had mentors when I was growing up at a time that I definitely needed them. And I appreciate that. And I also was told growing up that, you know, given what was shared with me, there's an expectation that I return that. And so I've become very comfortable in just feeling like my role and responsibility is to engage young people and to support them as much as possible.
And again, you're a member of the NAACP, it's the Pittsfield chapter, is it Berkshire?
Branch, yes.
How important, where do you see the NAACP's role now, 110-ish years after its inception, like after the failure of the Niagara Project?
Yes. Look at you.
But like, where is the NAACP's place in modern civil rights activism?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting because, you know, I think in terms of your age group that people have different perspective, like, you know, the NAACP is irrelevant now, you know. But I think it depends on who's involved, you know. So, like, we strive hard to get young people involved with the NAACP. You know, after the election, I came back home, and I was way somewhere, and I started calling the young women in particular that I know that I've worked with in ROPE and Youth Alive and in the schools, and I told them, I said, it's your time, okay? You know, Miss E is getting tired, okay? And my role now is to support you and help you figure out what's next. What are the next steps? And that's what I feel about the NAACP. Like, the president tries really hard to bring in younger people and to put them in the executive committee positions, because we need to hear their voices. We need to be pulling back, as in terms of the us gray hair folks, you know, and supporting those who are younger than us, and hearing their thoughts and their wisdoms and their directions. So I think the NAACP is very open to doing that. There are resources available. That's why today I mentioned it, because there's a youth committee in the NAACP, you know, and so for young people who want to be activists, that's a great place to learn. For about a week, I kept thinking, okay, how am I going to handle this? Okay, because I'm a news hound, all right? And I'm usually politically focused. And, you know, I went to Obama and took some of our young people to his inauguration, okay? I participated in women's marches in Washington, D.C., other marches. When I was in college, you know, to my family's concern, with the Socialist Party, you know, and they're like, Shirley, you're going to be marked and scarred. And okay, but, you know, you've taught me how to be an activist. Now you're trying to suggest, you know, that I have to stay in the classroom, you know, and not be politically active. It's too late. You've already awakened you know, my sense of being concerned and doing my part, you know. So yesterday, so it was really tough, you know, and I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? And then when I looked at my calendar and I saw yesterday I would be here watching Selma, I was like, thank you, Lord. You know, I was like, thank you for this gift, okay? Because I didn't have to struggle with not watching the news, because I felt like I intentionally needed to follow the lead of Michelle Obama, okay, and not add to, you know, his numbers. I don't, you know, I can only speak for myself and I can only control myself, but I know I did not want to do that. And so I didn't watch the news at all yesterday. Very proud of myself. I was here having this rich conversation with, you know, community members. And this morning, you know, I watched a little news, but I still didn't watch too much of it. And so it's going to be a process. It really is, trying to figure out how to maneuver through this situation theoretically for 4 years.
But we know the truth. We know the truth, and we will go forward to that truth, to freedom.
Ben Elliott of the Triplex Cinemas, you've just shown Selma for 2 days in a row now, to very different audiences. The first one was for like just general community members, and then the second one was a giant theater full of 8th grade classes from the area. What felt different about each crowd coming in?
I think the energy is definitely, whenever you get 100 plus 13-year-olds in a room, it's got a very unique energy to it, which we love. Having these conversations with 13-year-olds is so important, just to kind of make sure we are still having these conversations and remembering these names of all the people who worked so hard for the civil rights movement. And I think one of the big differences too with the crowd that we had yesterday was it was on Martin Luther King Jr. Day, which also ended up being the inauguration, and I think people were kind of looking to find some hope on that day, and kind of put their energy somewhere that didn't involve getting angry at a TV screen. Today was really about learning, and I think yesterday was a little more about appreciation, filling up the tank of energy going into whatever is about to come this year.
Small theaters like yours, things like this is a large part of your community engagement. Can you speak on that just a little bit?
It's the thing that really makes the difference. I mean, like we're still a movie theater, and I love blockbuster movies, and I think there's a lot of value in people being able to come together for those. But the thing that is the difference maker for a small theater like us is that we are able to do events like this where we can facilitate conversations with the community, because I think there's so much to talk about in so many movies, and that's one of the things you really lose in the streaming era, right? Where it's just like you watch a movie at home, movie's over, you have nowhere to kind of go with it. Here, one of the things that I love is the conversations that you hear just organically happening in the lobby, right? And that happens just with all of our movies, but doing something like this where we bring in someone who can actually talk about the real world impact of the story that you're seeing, and specifically the way it impacts our community. Sometimes you watch these stories and it feels like a world away, but really it does have, it's talking about issues that we're facing right here on the ground in Southern Berkshire County. So having a place like that, which after the pandemic really feels like the kind of spaces that have disappeared the most, and we're just trying to let people know that that's what we're here for, to have a conversation.
But I would suggest you really think about that, because you folks sitting here have had an opportunity to really understand and witness our history. That's our history. They're not talking about another country. That's us, Americans.
And I won't say this because I literally just talked to like 3 of them where I was a little surprised that this is kind of an outlier. Like, they get to come and see this movie, but they're not doing a unit on civil rights. And I'm curious about your thoughts on that too.
The Till movie is another movie that's been shown to students. I mean, obviously, I think it's stronger and there's more of an impact if you have an opportunity to further study it in the classroom in a safe environment, smaller setting. But I'm one of those folks, if whatever it takes in terms of education. So if it's a scenario like this and you have someone in front of you, engaging you in conversation, and that's as far as it goes right now, then that's fine for right now. But then that doesn't mean that, we can't push, to maybe engage in something a little deeper.
Thanks again to Shirley Edgerton, Ben Elliott at Triplex Cinemas, and the many, many very patient teachers at the Triplex Cinemas showing of Selma. I am in awe of all of you. Now, to discover which other words came out on top of the many scrums at the last meeting of the American Dialect Society with word nerd Emily Brewster, who got to go to Philadelphia and live our linguistic dreams. You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
The American Dialect Society's Word of the Year not only has a single Word of the Year, but then also has other categories such as this year, Most Useful, Most Likely to Succeed, Political Word of the Year, Digital Word of the Year, Informal Word of the Year, Most Creative Word of the Year, and this year, this is a new category for this year, Most Fun While It Lasted Word of the Year.
I'm so curious.
We're speaking with Emily Brewster, resident wordster from Merriam-Webster, our dictionary in Springfield.
Through whom we are vicariously living her experience at is it the conference?
American Dialect Society.
Yes, at the American Dialect Society's annual Word of the Year vote.
Raw Dog is the overall, it's best picture of words of the year for American Dialect Society, and I can't wait till that movie comes out.
It's one of those things where I can't separate it from its earlier work, and so I have a hard time with its later pieces.
Yes, exactly. But it sounded like the other categories were very fun. Should we run down what the other categories were and what how they fared and what rose to the top in those categories?
Sure. In Most Useful, we have lock in, meaning to enter a state of deep focus and concentration. That won that category. That was deemed the best of the most useful category. But also in that category, we had bed rot. Bed rot, as one person put it in the nomination session, it's when you lie in your bed and just stare at your phone into the PMs.
I know certain people in my household that I could talk to about that particular word. That might be their word of the year.
An older term for the same thing is a little less grotesque, and that is the word herkle-durkle.
I love that. That means just sitting around in your bed all day?
Oh, I love
herkle-durkle.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. All right. Also in useful, we have cooked and crash out and eat, especially used in the past tense ate, meaning to execute, accomplish, or complete something remarkably well. They'll also use the word devour this way, and also they will use 4 + 4 to mean 8.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, I love that too. All right, so that's the most useful category. Next, we had most likely to succeed. The winner in this category was the word unserious, which is interesting because that word has very much already succeeded in around the 17th century.
Totally.
It has very, very much has some noted success. The word aura was also a nominee, charismatic presence, often associated with athletes. Girly pop as a noun, meaning a fun, trustworthy female friend.
Oh, I like that.
Two good friends, two best friends.
NIL, name, image, and likeness. This is the means by which student athletes receive financial compensation. You know this one, don't you, Monty?
I don't. I was thinking of PIL, Public Image Limited, which is Johnny Rotten's band, post-Sex Pistols.
And then also in Most Likely to Succeed, terrified, spelled TARIFFIED, afraid of the consequences of excessive tariffs.
The whole wine industry is feeling this right now. They felt it last time, too.
Yeah. Now, NIL, very serious people were advocating for NIL, saying that it was the term that was, in truth, the better candidate for word of the year because it was going to have this huge impact on, very powerful part of our economy and our society, which is student athletes.
And I'm imagining, and with the onset of AI taking over everything, that name, image, and likeness is going to become a very valuable commodity that people are going to barter with in the future.
Well, they should. I mean, it's a job.
Right, but I mean,
Being
you may end up giving
an athlete is a job.
Oh, for sure. But I mean, you may end up giving your the sound of your voice legally to some company that uses AI to approximate what Khalees Smith sounds like for a fee.
Or wherever you get podcasts.
Or wherever you get podcasts.
Or wherever you get podcasts.
Yeah.
Or they try to steal it from you like they did Scarlett Johansson. That's interesting.
Okay, under political word of the year, we had weird.
Well, it's true. These guys are just weird. The fascists depend on fear, but we're not afraid of weird people.
Sane washing. Mm-hmm. Lib out, which means to have false or unrealistic hope and positivity for the future from embracing mainstream democratic politics.
You think you just fell out of a coconut tree?
Burrito taxi. This is a mocking term used in arguments about the rising prices of using food delivery apps, ridiculing the idea that it's a sign of inflation. So, somebody's complaining about how much eggs are costing now. You just say, are you really complaining, or is this just really about your burrito taxi?
I love that. And so it's like a DoorDash. It's like an insult to DoorDash or whatever.
Yes.
Burrito taxi.
Broligarchy.
Oh. That word says a lot without ever having heard it before.
Luigi. Political word of the year.
Wow, Luigi.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yes, because the name has turned into a productive morpheme, that's what they say. People talk about being Luigi pilled, Luigification, Luigi intensifies, also used as a verb to get Luigi'd.
Wow.
Oh.
And is it being capitalized or not capitalized when it's used this way?
All that I'm seeing, and again, I haven't done full research on these, I've seen capitalized use. Which isn't surprising also for something so new. If it sticks around, it'll probably lose it.
And
it might not stick around either.
It has to do with Luigi Mangione. It has to do with the assassination of the head of a healthcare corporation and the fact that he became, in some people's minds, a hero for doing such a thing.
Yeah. All right. The last nominee in Political Word of the Year is bleach blonde, bad built butch body.
If someone on this committee then starts talking about somebody's bleach blonde, bad built butch body, that would not be engaging in personalities, correct?
A what now?
Oh.
Now this is an epithet that was used by Jasmine Crockett, representative from Texas, Democrat, toward Marjorie Taylor Greene, Republican of Georgia, after Greene insulted Crockett.
Yep.
Wow. Guess which one I would have voted for.
It will have many applications in the upcoming year administration.
Wow, that's interesting. But remind me the winner in the political category again after all that?
It was Luigi.
Luigi. Wow.
Oh.
Interesting.
Yeah. All right. In Digital Word of the Year, we had brain rot, mental deterioration from consumption of media/content held to have no redeeming value, also the media itself. AI slop, content of little value generated by artificial intelligence, often intended to flood search results. Cope, as a noun, a belief or practice that someone uses to emotionally or intellectually deal with a negative circumstance or situation. Tradwife, wife who fulfills notions of traditional gender roles, often in line with the white supremacist subculture. Exit, spelled X-I-T, and Exodus, spelled X-O-D-U-S. That's the mass departure of users from Twitter/X.
Are they going to have to come up with a Facebook and Meta one now?
Or you could just use the same one. Brain rot was the winner for Digital Word of the Year. This one made sense to me, I should say that if my household had been doing the vote, brain rot would have won for Digital Word of the Year for sure, because my 13-year-old son is always talking about brain rot.
Because again, that has to do with like the skibbity phenomenon.
Right. Yes, he's very disparaging of the media that his sister is interested in, of course. Everything that she's interested in is brain rot. That's just how it goes.
As is the right of the older sibling to believe.
I think so. All right. Under Informal Word of the Year, The winner was raw dog. You can be in more than one category. So
Okay,
it also
good.
won informal word of the year.
It took home 2 awards at the ceremony.
Yeah,
It's a big
2
winner.
awards.
Yeah.
Cooked was another nominee, meaning totally exhausted. We talked about that one before. Mewing, a jaw strengthening technique developed by British orthodontist John Mew.
It sounds like a thing a cat would do.
That's why.
No, but isn't it? It's the guy's name is John Mew. It doesn't have to do with a cat, right?
That's right. It
Yeah.
does not originally have to do with the cat at all.
It sounds like it has to do with a cat, but it
sure does.
It doesn't really. But
But
maybe
it does not.
It does now.
Yeah.
Maybe you look like a cat when you do it.
Mog. Next one is mog, to outdo in attractiveness or appearance, to assert dominance based on physical appearance. It's derived from amog, meaning alpha male of group.
Deemed mostly because people don't necessarily understand the whole alpha male misinformation thing.
W as an adjective, an informal word of the year category, being the best of its kind or an excellent instance of something, as in somebody is W Riz, or that was a W crash out.
Oh, that's
Have
pretty.
you all heard this?
No.
I had not heard this. Another interesting thing about this is that some of the people making nominations were high school students.
Oh. That's awesome.
Anybody could attend this. I think this one was actually made by a college student, the nomination of W. But there were high school students who are also chiming in and making cases for things and nominating words.
That's excellent. I like the fact that kids are getting involved in it at such a young age. That's fun.
It's exciting. Yeah, for sure. And then yap, meaning to talk excessively or enthusiastically. Also the extension of yap as Japanese, which is incomprehensible chatter.
I think that's rude.
Yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about that.
I have the same. Yes, it doesn't feels a little gross.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, 2 more categories. Most creative word of the year. There is maxing as a combining form, enhancement to maximize one's attractiveness or appeal.
Chilling out, maxing, relaxing, all cool.
As in looks maxing and jaw maxing.
By mewing.
Right, that's right. That's right. If you mew, you're doing some jaw maxing. In de club, we all fam.
I kind of love this one too.
I mean, I do, but I also, it's another one of those appropriation of AAVE things where I'm like, I'm not sure how I feel about the widespread use of this.
Oh yeah, but I love when people say it.
Yes.
Like when Maya Rudolph said it.
Yes.
To Kamala Harris on Saturday Night Live.
Okay, now you're just throwing out memes.
But that is not true. I am here to reach across the aisle. Hundreds of Republicans have endorsed me because in the club, we all fam.
Yes, but
I thought that was great.
But to her credit and my point, she part of the fam.
Exactly. It's fun for me to watch it and to listen to it. I'm never going to say it.
Yeah. No, it comes from Broad City, from a Broad City sketch.
Do you know them? No. But in the club, we all fam. What? In the club, we all fam. In the club, we are all family. Are you racist?
Yeah, we define it as a viral quotation used to facetiously assert solidarity.
I love
Did
it.
not win, though.
Okay.
Broligarchy was again a nominee in this category in Most Creative Word of the Year. And then the one that won is, I don't know, I'll see what you think of it. It is the XIX'd, a phrasal template with an invented irregular verb used as a playful intensifier, as in, the gasp I gusped, or the scream I screamt.
Yeah, I love this.
This is fun.
I use this all the time.
Yeah.
I love this. I think this is absolutely fascinating that we're creating these irregular verbs, which are called strong verbs, technically,
Weird.
sometimes. We're creating strong verbs as a means to intensify the meaning of the verb itself, which I just think it's brilliant.
What other examples are there of that? I think this is fun, and I want to start doing it.
I yeeted, I yet.
The yeet a yet. Another word that
Right.
people of a certain generation, neither of those things are going to understand at all. But my 11-year-old probably loves that.
Yeah, isn't it amazing?
It's a kind of
it's English.
kind of
It's
brain
just-
rot that they just love.
Is yet the past tense of yeet?
It is now. Thank you, American Dialect Society.
No, I mean, I just made that one up, but that would be an example of this phrasal template, right?
Yeah.
You take a regular verb, because the past tense of yeet is actually yeeted, and then you repeat the verb I yeeted, and then with an irregular form, I yeeted, I yet. Okay, last category, most fun while it lasted, word of the year. The winner of this was, Monty, you'll be pleased to know, brat.
Yes.
Yeah. Also in this category, demure, which did have a big year. Demure had a big year.
I would have voted for that one over brat.
Oh, you would have?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You see how I do my makeup for work? Very demure, very mindful.
Did you hear Ray Fiennes doing, like, he did the whole very demure speech on New Year's Eve? It was really fun to see, like, a Shakespearean, like a British actor do the whole thing. It was great.
I did not see that.
Yeah, it was fun.
Can you put that in the show notes?
Yeah, oh no, you're going to hear it.
All right, awesome.
This is how I do my makeup for work. Very demure, very mindful.
Also in this category, we have Hoktua.
Okay.
Okay, and hold space, meaning to create a safe space for a person, concept, or thing to be present without judgment.
Because of Wicked. Now, that's the one I would have voted for.
This week, people are taking the lyrics of Defying Gravity and really holding space with that.
I feel like that one might have more staying power.
Yeah, I feel like that's true.
Oh, yeah. People are going to use that for lots of different things, for lots of different reasons, and did previously.
I mean, you're using it every week on this show.
I know, but because of the zeitgeist surrounding it and Wicked and that famous interview, which was just incredible.
I've seen this week people are taking the lyrics of Defying Gravity and really holding space with that.
Well, thank you, Emily Brewster, who is part of the American Dialect Society, in addition to being our senior editor of note here on the Fabulous 413 from Merriam-Webster, our dictionary in Springfield. I'm glad you had a good time. I'm glad they weren't as bow-tied, uptight as the other folks that you're usually hanging out with, the dictionary lexicographers. These linguists seem like they are fun.
It was a lot of fun.
I love that the youth are coming.
Yes, bring them.
And skewing the vote.
Yeah, no, the youth should also come to the Dictionary Society of North America's biennial meeting also.
Shake it up.
Bring your light up bow ties. If you're curious about all of the words that the American Dialect Society brought to their floor, or what they do day in and day out, find more info on their site at americandialect.org, and maybe you can vote for 2025's Word of the Year. You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM. On the next Fabulous 413, we take a most tasty trip to Local Burger in Northampton to talk about using local beef, creating unlikely but delicious combinations to delight and confound, and the triumphs and challenges of developing their local franchise. We'll also head out to Sheffield to hang out with adorable calves, their equally cute moms, and the ripped from the sci-fi pages robots that milk them at Twin Rivers Farm with dairy farmer Bob Kilmer and Dan Carr. And we'll see you tomorrow.